In another lifetime, I wrote an article on customizing vintage Star Wars action figures. And this led to a ripple where I was contacted by the author of this book, who had also written an article on customizing vintage Star Wars figures and sought me out saying, "We need to talk shop." And his name was David West Reynolds. Somewhere between his Customizing Magazine article and this book, he wrote an article about traveling to Tunisia, North Africa, to track down the filming locations for Star Wars. This fell upon the attention of Rick McCallum, the prequels producer, who hired David to be his guide. Um, I knew about this. He signed me this photo, said to Alex, one of the only ones who knew your pal, Captain David West Reynolds. Upon his return from the prequels scouting trip, he sent me a package. Now, this box was one of several boxes inside the larger box. And I don't know if you can make out the gold on gold hieroglyphics there, but it's got the way he signed his name, the Eye of Horus, a couple of other symbols, and then he actually duplicated my monograph right there. Now, what this contains are a vial of sand from the Dune Sea, a rock from the canyon where the Jawas blast R2D2, also seen in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and a piece of a building in Mos Eisley that was about to be torn down. Right here was another interesting little item that I'll show you in a moment. The letter gave very strict instructions for when to open which items. He saved the best for last, for at the bottom of the box was this: a fiberglass toe bone from the skeleton that C-3PO walks past in the Tatooine desert. This is in actuality a bone left over from the movie One of Our Dinosaurs is Missing. You can see the chop mat on the inside, and there's actually some grains of Tatooine sand that have come out of it over the years inside this acrylic case that I put it in. But that's not what we're here to discuss today. But the Tatooine sand does come into play. Notice his boots, very Jedi-like boots. Well, those boots can be seen in the book. They're the boots being worn by the modal nodes. In fact, David's in at least one of those costumes, wearing his real boots covered in Tatooine sand. And that brings us to the other item that was in the package. And this guy is going to bring it all full circle, from customizing action figures to a trip to Tunisia. You see, inside this little camera case for film is a piece of resin. David had made his own version of a cantina band sculpt, a little tiny handmade Bith head. And he sent me a copy. And for years, I have wanted to make vintage style cantina band members. At the time, Hasbro had not yet made cantina band members. And my own skills at casting and reproducing things in duplicate has been less than successful. But from the neck down, his recipe was the vintage Luke Jedi body. He cut it up at the elbow, put some brass wire in there, repositioned the pose, painted the hands flesh tone, and fashioned some crude instruments for them to hold. He made a couple of these using beaters. I myself tried a different recipe to make Cantina band members, and it was disastrous. But when the retro Luke Jedi showed up at Ollie's for $3.99 and I had a 15% off coupon, well, I bet you can guess what happened then. So I sourced on 2 different visits to Ollie's as many Luke Jedis as they had. I also got some for a friend. And I had some Cantina band members by Hasbro left over from a different custom project where I took the bust ups and gave them legs. But before I could haul these guys out of storage, of course, Toy Polloi beat me to it and recently did a couple of Cantina band members using a Luke Jedi body. My plan was to go slightly different. I'm not going to paint the pants gray because I've always wanted them to be solid black, like the ones on the backdrop from the Kenner Cantina playset. And I'm undecided whether I'm going to paint the black gloved hand or simply drill into the arms and use the hands from the Hasbro figures. I also want to take some solvent to the Bith heads and take off some of the paint. And these instruments here they just aren't going to cut it as vintage style. So I need to find the older version of the Hasbro figures, not the ones that I used for the Bust Ups project.
Back when the instruments were molded in one solid color and unpainted.
This is where it currently stands, and I hope you appreciate the inspiration for this, and keep watching, and hopefully I'll have it done one of these days. Thank you for watching.